Hello everyone and welcome to the March Card Club. So this month the designer series paper that we're featuring is called Perennial Lavender. Okay, this is a really pretty paper. It's got some beautiful purples in there. So if you like the purple tones, this is perfect for you. This sheet of paper I'm going to be using on both of the cards. Okay, so you'll be making two each of the two cards. Okay, so there is a fancy fold, which is called a double Z fold card, which looks like this one here. This card is a very simple fancy fold. It is quite a heavy card. There's lots and lots of layers in there. I've actually used no dimensionals at all on this card, which is really unusual. So that's the first card. Second card is a little bit more simple in the sense that we're just using some die cuts. And of course, we've got some of the same designer series paper, and we've added some of the thread as well. So along with your designer series paper, you will have received some of the silver threaded twine. Okay, so it's a very natural sort of colouring to it, which works really well with these papers. And you will also receive some purple shine shimmer gems. Fine shimmer gems. Okay, so you'll have a selection of those as well. So you will be using some of your designer series paper, which you'll need to cut to size. You'll be using some of the thread and the embellishments as well. Other than the designer series paper and those things you've got in your kits, all the other pieces of cardstock are pre-cut and ready for you to use. You will be making two of each card, so there's enough product there for you to make two. Let me just pop that aside. I've got this sheet out because this is the piece, as I mentioned, I'm using on the front of both of the cards, and I want to show you how to cut it to make sure that you get these corners to use on those cards. Okay, so let's get started with this. So with the first card, which is the double Z fold card, it's really not a difficult fancy fold card at all. So your piece of half a sheet of A4, you will need your bone folder. You're going to be folding in half, running over with your bone folder, and then the top piece here, you're going to fold back and line up with that score line. So that is the base of the card. Okay. For your second piece, which measures 9 centimeters by 27 centimeters, you are going to be needing your paper trimmer because you do have some score lines that you need to do. So there's just two score lines. The first one is at 9 centimeters and the second one is at 18. Then you are left with a piece of cardstock that has 9 centimeter by 9 centimeter pieces there. So go ahead and fold those, and it's sort of a concertina style fold that you're doing, which makes it look like that. So I hope that shows up okay. All right, I'm just going to pop that piece aside just for a moment. I want to work on this piece here. In your kit, you will have a piece of white that measures 10 centimeters by 14.4, which is going to be stuck just in there. And you'll also have for each card two pieces of white which measure 10 centimeters by 9.6, which will be sticking onto those pieces just there. Okay. You're going to need to cut a couple of pieces of your designer series paper. For my base piece, which is this piece just in here, you only see a small amount of it. I've chosen the one that's got the small lavender flowers on it. You could choose something else if you wanted to. It's totally up to you. So this measures 9.5 by 13.9, which is going to go just there. Out of the same piece of paper, I've cut 9 centimeters by 6.4, which is going on the front. And I've cut a second piece of 9 centimeters by 6.4 to go just there. So let me share with you, before you cut this piece in particular, to cut the piece for the front. So this one here, which as you can see, it's got some of the foliage, it's got some of the flowers and a butterfly. So let me just pop those pieces aside, and you'll notice the reverse side of this piece has got that check pattern that I've used. So I'm going to be cutting this piece of designer series paper at 8 by 8 centimeters. I'm going to make sure with that I'm getting this corner here. So that will go in, and I'm going to do 8 by 8. For your second piece, come down because you've got 2 cards to do. If you put that piece in there, cut there, then you get another piece to use on the second card of this, having that nice little corner piece there. When I've cut my pieces for example, for this piece here, which is the reverse side, I've actually cut my other pieces first so that then I knew what part of, I guess, of the paper not to cut into, because you'll see that there's more, that we've got a couple of butterflies. We want to be able to reserve those for the other pieces that we need. Okay, so I've got my pieces. I'm going to put the paper trimmer away. So I do apologize if this is a little bit confusing, but please hit pause, go back, rewind if you need to, because I'm not sure if I've explained that perfectly well. So I've got my piece here. I want to make sure the butterflies are going, at least one of the butterflies is going the right way. This is going to be going onto one of the pieces of white, which is 8.5 centimeters by 8.5, and then onto the card front. Okay, so that is the piece that I've needed to cut first. Okay, these pieces here are out of a different piece of the designer series paper. This one is this paper here. So you need to make sure you've got those corner pieces cut first before you go cut these pieces. I hope that makes sense. I hope you read the note with the email that I've attached just explaining to watch the first part of the video and cut some of the cardstock first before you start cutting into the rest of it. Okay, so I'm going to start putting this piece together, and I also need one more 8.5 by 8.5. I'm using this end where it's quite heavy with the flowers so that I'm not cutting into my piece here that's got the butterflies. I need those for the next card. So we'll go another 8 centimeters here. To give me my piece of the check. Okay, I hope you're still with me. If you're a little bit, it's a little bit messy, this one, just with the way that you need to cut the designer series paper to make it work. So let's start sticking some of this together. All of these bottom layers are stuck flat, so there's no dimensionals at all on that bottom layer. And I'm going to use some Stampin' Seal. Now, you can use any of the designer series paper you like, but for this particular card, I have used the one with the butterflies, but you can choose whichever one you like. Okay, so very simple. Some matting there. And making sure, of course, if you're using something that's directional, making sure that your flowers are going in the right direction. Same with the next two pieces. And this one, of course, I'm using the check side up. And then, again, Stampin' Seal. Now, you can use a little bit of Tombow. You can use double-sided tape. With this one, you want to try and keep whatever adhesive you're using as clean as possible, because we don't want the layers to stick together. So if you're using the liquid Tombow glue, use just a small amount so that you don't get the whole card sticky. So probably double-sided tape of some sort is the best way of going. Okay, a little bit more, and then I'll stick this on. Now, with both of these cards, you will need a sentiment stamp set. I have used Go To Greetings because that's one of my favorites. Okay, so that is the base layer. Okay, so with the Z fold. I'm going to pop that just aside for a moment because I want to do my next piece. So you will have in your packets 3 pieces of white cardstock that measure 8.5 by 8.5 centimeters. 2 of those we're going to be sticking our designer series paper on. So the pieces we've cut with the butterfly and the piece with the check. Okay, this one we're leaving blank just so you got somewhere to write, because you could put some more pretty paper on there, but you're not going to have much space to write anything. So that's to write your happy birthday message. Okay, so with these, again, I'm using some Stamp and Seal. There's the first one and the second, and the third we're leaving white. If you wanted to decorate the third one, you could put a small strip of designer series paper down one side if you wanted to, but it probably doesn't need it because there's lots of pattern and colour happening on this card. Okay, so next I'm sticking these down. Of course, I am moving fairly fast, so if you are falling behind, just remember to pause the video. And then I've still got my other 2 pieces to put on these other sections. Okay, so that goes in the middle, and then the piece of white. Pretty much the only plain piece of white that we have on this card is this one piece here. Okay, and then you have that Z fold there. Okay, next. This part is quite easy to do, but do it one piece at a time. So these sandwich in together. Okay, so when they're in, they are going to open just like that. I'm going to be using some other double-sided tape for this one, which is just a little bit stronger. This is Stamp and Seal Plus. Okay, so it is just a little bit stronger double-sided tape. I'm not worrying about any adhesive except a couple of strips just there. Do not get your adhesive over this side because it's going to stick to this section here. So it's just 2 strips of double-sided tape. And I'm going to line that up around about there. Okay, so that way it doesn't matter if it's a little bit further towards the left or the right, just as long as you haven't got any adhesive on this section here, because otherwise that will just stick onto this piece here. So keeping that piece closed over, so this is the piece of the white, this is the back. I'm going to be using, again, the Stamp and Seal Plus because it is a stronger adhesive. Okay, so rather than trying to get it to line up, all you're doing is taking the base, flipping it over, giving it a rub, and then that way it's all lined up perfectly on your card. Okay, as I mentioned, this is quite a heavy card. It's a really thick card as well because of the multiple layers that we've got going, but that is the double Z fold card. To finish this one up, oops, just need to get the right cap for that one. We have got just a stamp to do, and I've got the happy birthday, but you can make this whatever you would like it to be. I have got gorgeous grape ink, and the stamp set that I'm using is, underneath, Go To Greetings, which is my favourite sentiment stamp set. It's got all the basics in there in different fonts, which is really quite nice. One sad thing to note, this stamp set is retiring, so I'm actually quite devastated over that, because this is one, if you watch my lives and come to my classes, this is a stamp set that I use a whole lot of. And of course you can make yours whatever sentiment you would like, but this is one of the Scallop Contour die cuts, which I use a lot as well. And again, I'm really quite sad because these are retiring as well. So we've got the Happy Birthday, and I'm using Gorgeous Grape. If you don't use Gorgeous Grape, you could use a green, you could use another purple ink. You're really quite unlimited with what colour you'd like to choose. I would just choose something that is going to coordinate a little bit with some of these colours. Let me just get rid of that before I end up with ink everywhere. And finally, this is going onto my card front, and I'm actually going to have it a little lower than what I have on this one because I don't want to cover both of the butterflies. Now, the same as I did with this front piece, I'm only going to be putting some adhesive on half of my little tag, and that's going to be stuck on around about there. As you can see, it is a little bit lower. I've just cut a different piece of the Designer Series paper, so you can see there's just slight differences, but I've still got my little butterflies there. To finish this off, I will be using some of these purple, let me get the right name of it because I didn't get it right last time, Purple Fine Shimmer Gems. So I am going to use some of these darker purple. These ones are Berry Burst, which is sort of this colour that's in the paper as well. And I'm just using my take your pick tool and just sliding off the little gems off the backing plastic. Okay, so that is card number 1, a double Z fold card. Of course, this fold is really quite simple. It's just a few scores. You could actually make this in with all different sorts of Designer Series paper and stamps. So that is card number 1. All right, let me go and get the bits out for card number 2, which is this one here. And I stuck mine down. I stuck mine on crooked, which is killing me, but I'm kind of living with that. I'm hoping this second one will actually be a little bit better. We'll wait and see. Okay, so the card base is Highland Heather, which is just a lighter sort of version of Gorgeous Grape. They actually work beautifully together. I have got a piece of white cardstock, which is 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres by 14.4, and I have a little thin strip that's going to go along the inside edge there, and I've cut that all out of this same piece of paper. Again, we've got the Scallop Contour dies. This is one of the larger ones. You'll have a piece of Pretty Peacock, which is 8.3 centimetres by 11.8, which is going to mat in there really quite nicely. Now with this piece, as you can see, I have got my butterflies, so I'm going to be cutting this opposite corner here. Oh, just before I do that, let me show you. I have given you these die cuts. I've given you 4 each of those, just so that if you don't quite line up the first one, you have a second stab. So there's actually two runs for each card that you can have using that particular little die cut, because it is a little bit tight to get it lined up. Okay, so I need to cut my piece of Designer Series paper. Oh, where is it? To go in here. So I'm going to be using, I actually think I'm going to use this section just here. So this is going to be cut at 7.8 centimetres. So you've got your 7.8. Okay, and then you've still got a whole nother corner and section here to use for something else. And then we've got 11.3. 3. Because where that is, I want that big butterfly there. I'm actually going to trim off about 2 centimeters off the bottom there. Okay, so before you cut, just have a look and see where that lands. So that was 11.3 centimeters. So that way I've got it lined up at 11.3. That way I've actually got some of the flowers, and I've got a couple of those butterflies as well, which gives me that piece there. Gosh, I hope I cut that to the right size. You'll see. Which gives me the piece to mat onto the pretty peacock. That looks pretty good actually. Which is going to just go on there, which creates that. So as you can see, I have got my butterflies there. I've got room a little further down to put my sentiment, and I'm also going to be using some of the thread, the silver threaded twine as well. Okay, so that piece I don't need. Okay, so let's get on with actually putting this together. Bone folder, there it is. So as I mentioned, this is a half sheet of A4 that I've just cut the other way, and of course you can score it if you would like to ahead of time. So these pieces here, I'm going to use some of my double-sided tape to stick these 2 pieces together. And this card actually does have some dimensionals on it. So I'm going to be grabbing out some of those as well. I do have some good news. If you really love this paper, this is actually carrying over into the annual catalogue, which is really exciting because we actually, we don't normally get papers carrying over. So it's really quite lovely to have that as an option this time. So some dimensionals, you can use standard, any size you like. I just happen to have the minis going, and I do apologise. My neighbours are out using a grinder by the sound of it, so I hope you can't hear that too much. Okay, and then it's just stabbing into the little dimensional papers to get those off quickly. And then this is going to line up around about there. So just take your time lining that up, and that way then it actually ends up being really nice and square. This is going to be stuck flat onto the card front, and I'm aiming, because I didn't line that one up terribly well, I'm aiming to actually line this up a little bit better. I am using Tombow on this one, which is the liquid glue, because that way when I put it down, I can actually wiggle it around just a little bit. If you are using Tombow, don't get too closest to the edges, just in case it sort of smushes out. But using that bit of Tombow, I actually have a moment or two to wiggle it. Now, if I had to use double-sided tape, there is no way that I would have lined that up so easily. Okay, so I'm just going to give that a moment to bond. But as you can see, that one actually looks a bit better than the first one. That's really good. Okay, I like to stick things down straight. So before I do my stamping, I am going to finish off the inside, which is just this 1 centimetre piece of, or strip of, the designer series paper. And for that, I'm going to use just a really nice thin double-sided tape. This way then you don't end up with extra sticky bits on the inside of the card. So peel off that paper. And I have cut mine a little bit long, but anybody who's been coming to my classes and watching my lives, you know that I cut those pieces just a touch longer than needed. And then I'm just going to trim up these little edges here. Okay, this is now going to be stuck inside the card front. And I think I stuck that piece on crooked, but you know what? It's inside. And whoever gets this card is going to love it. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. Okay, very simple into the card. I do need to grab my stamp set out. I have done this one as just a note, but I'm actually thinking I'm going to do this as a happy birthday because I tend to use happy birthdays a lot more than anything else. So again, I'm using the same gorgeous grape. And I'm going to see how I go lining this up because there's not much space there. That's actually not too bad. I'm happy with that. Now, oftentimes when I'm stamping on these little things, and most people who have tried to do, normally I'd stamp and then die cut, but I thought you guys are going to get these die cuts as they are, so I thought it'd actually be a little bit easier for you to see me lining it up. But as I mentioned, if you don't quite line it up, you do have extra ones in your packets. Okay, so you've got a total of 4 to do your 2 cards. So you do have a spare if you're not happy with the way the first one stamps. So I need to put my bit of twine underneath my sentiment. So I'm going to be putting down there some double-sided tape. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what tape you use. All it is something for this twine to stick to. So you take the backing bit off and then you are kind of going to do almost like an S. Okay, so that is how, and you do have the chance to move it to make sure that you're happy with how it looks. I need that a little bit bigger. That might be better. Okay, so let me see how that looks. Yep, that works pretty well. And then snip off that length. So keep your twine. I've still got this on the roll, but with your length that you've got, don't cut it to size until after it's actually attached onto there. Okay, so give that a little bit of a press. Because this is quite thick, and you'll note that when you're using your dimensionals that it does take a bit to stick it down. Okay, I'm going to be doing on this one an extra layer of dimensionals because it's just, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's just not sticking real well. So I've got my first layer of dimensionals and I'm going to take the little covers off and I'm putting on a second layer of dimensionals over the top. Now, if you have some of those thicker dimensionals that you can get, you probably won't need to do this, but using the Stampin' Up! Ones, you will. Okay, so just remember, put your first layer down, take the little paper covers off, put the second layer down, take the paper covers off, and then stick this onto the card front. And it should actually stick a lot better than what my first one did. Okay, and again, I've got it a little bit lower, but it's actually sitting beautifully flat, whereas my other one is a little bit lumpy and bumpy. I like the idea of that being flatter. Where I've got the twine, I don't actually have dimensionals underneath that twine. I've put the dimensionals either side. Okay, and finally, to finish this card off, and remember you do have 2 to make, so you can always use different designer series paper on the second one. I've got my purple fine shimmer gems, and I'm going to be putting about 5 on because why not? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 more. There we go. 5, and you can put those wherever you like. So there we go. The cards that are done, I've gone through them fairly quickly. I hope you, as I mentioned, that you have read my note about cutting some of the papers ahead of time that I include with the email. So you will be receiving the PDF, which has the link, of course, to this YouTube video. So here are the cards that we have made, and of course you will have at the end of it 2 each. So thank you so much for being a part of the club this month. If you have any questions at all about this video and these cards, please let me know. I'm more than happy to answer the questions because I felt so I fumbled a little bit through the directions for cutting some of these designer series papers. So please reach out if you have any questions. Thanks again for being a part of the club. I hope you've really enjoyed this month and might consider joining in for another month, another time. Thanks again, everyone. Bye-bye.